Well, good morning, everybody. Ooh, that's hot.
Morning.
Morning.
That'll wake you
New batteries.
Well, it's good to see everybody. It's been a little while since we've been together, either due to my pain or Yahweh's snow. So,
Angel dandruff.
it, and I mean, we've got quite a bit of snow for Pueblo West.
Too much. Too much.
So, but one of the things that Dad allowed me to do that time is just sit and reflect. Has anybody ever done that? Mm-hmm. You sit and you reflect and think, man, I've been through a lot.
Hits me the most in the mountains.
Yeah.
Find myself just sitting there thinking about things.
And how great Yahweh is and how minuscule we are, but so many times our problems overshadow us. And so that's what I want to talk about today is reflection and the need for reflection. So what would you say is the need for reflection?
Probably the most important thing is it puts things in perspective. As far as, like you said, life, it's real easy to get consumed by life. And I think when you have the chance to reflect like that, like you said, you go, maybe this minuscule stuff in my life isn't what's important. Maybe there's something else I should be concentrating on.
Absolutely. And, when we go through just the everyday things, it doesn't seem to be a lot in the beginning, but it can snowball real quick, can it? And I think it's good to reflect, to kind of, like you said, put it in perspective, put our life in perspective. Because sometimes we get all caught up in the moment of whatever, and it robs the peace from us. Let's go to Malachi 3:3. You want to read that for us?
Sure. He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, and they may offer the Lord, that they may offer the Lord an offering in righteousness.
Walking through the fire.
Walking through the fire. How many people get tired of walking through the fire?
Big me. I'm over it.
Yeah. But how do you refine gold?
No, that's okay.
You
Yeah.
get-
Fire.
In the fire.
And there's stages.
Mm-hmm.
You don't start off with 24 karat. You start off with 10. You work up to it.
I'm okay with being in 10 karat right now.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Make me some brass, would you?
Yeah.
Tin, I don't care. Aluminum foil.
Well, maybe if we go through here, it'll be less we have to go through
Good point.
on the others.
And like Walter was saying, there is a process to the refining, of silver or gold. You want to read that, please?
This is called Lessons from a Silversmith. There was a group of women studying the book of Malachi for their Bible study. As they studied chapter 3, they came across verse 3, which says, "He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver." This verse puzzled the women, and they wondered what this statement could mean concerning the character and nature of God. One of the women volunteered to research the process of refining silver and then report back to the group at the next Bible study to share what she had found. That week, the woman contacted a local silversmith and made an appointment to come in and watch him work. She didn't mention the reason for her interest beyond the fact that she was curious about how the process of refining silver worked. As she watched the silversmith, he held a piece of silver over the fire and let it heat up. When refining silver, he explained, one must hold the silver in the very middle of the fire, where the flames are the hottest, so as to burn away all the impurities. The woman thought about God holding us in such a hot spot. Then she thought again about the verse that he sits as a refiner and purifier of silver. Is it true that you have to sit here in front of the fire through the whole refining process, she asked. Yes, the man answered, and not only do I have to sit here holding the silver, I have to keep my eye on it the entire time it's in the fire. If the silver is left in the flames even a moment too long, it will be destroyed. The woman was silent for a moment. Then she asked the silversmith, "How do you know when the silver is fully refined?" He smiled at her and answered, "Oh, that's the easy part, when I see my image reflected in it." Today, if you are feeling, this is just this lady's blog. If you're feeling the heat of the fire, remember that you are not going through this alone. You may be in the fire, but God has his eye on you and will keep his hand on you until he sees his image perfected in you. You will not be destroyed. You will come forth as pure gold or silver, whichever you prefer.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think we often forget, and it's kind of some leftover, at least in me, it's some of the leftover churchianity stuff that I've got in me. But it's the gospel of prosperity. You know how bad I want that to be true? I want that to be true, but I have not found it to be true in my life. I am prosperous in other ways, as we all are. We're prosperous in other ways. And I'm not saying being prosperous in money is bad or evil or nothing, but it's just...
You cannot serve two masters.
Yeah, you can't.
Nope.
You can't. And
If you chase that dollar all the time, I mean, the Father may bless you with the dollar, but if you chase that dollar all the time, man, you're not chasing God.
no, you're not.
What are your fruits?
And so that some of that dross that has to come out.
I thought that was really cool, though. That, you know, how do you know when it's done? Oh, I can see my reflection in it. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the same way Yahweh does it,
Right.
you know.
Brings up the verse about storing up treasures in heaven.
Right.
Like he's saying, that's where our prosperity is.
Yeah. But that's hard, you know. That's very hard. Has anybody ever got tired of always being the good guy?
Pick me again. Pick me again.
You always have got to be self-sacrificing, and you always have to make the right decisions and behave correctly, and it just makes my head hurt.
I always have to be the person at work to solve all the problems, it seems like. And my poor bride, I come home, I'm like, you just figure this out. I'm tired of making all the
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah, and it gets that way. And that's one reason that the women started being the head of the household because the women were the ones that were there. You're there 10, 12 hours a day with the kids, you know, and the household chores and all of that. So you're already coping and dealing with all that stuff. And we let them as guys, don't we guys? If we be honest,
I'd be lost.
sometimes it's real convenient to have a wife that is very alpha, because she can take care of those hard things for you. However, it's also very inconvenient to have an alpha wife, for the same reason. So, but yeah, that's something that we gravitate to. One of the things that we often do in church is we use words and we don't know the definition. It's kind of like the politics of this country in the last 10 years, probably 14 years, is they just make a statement. There is no rule of law behind it. It cannot be supported, but people don't know. I'll give you an example. We went to Pueblo shortly after COVID happened, and a friend of mine, Carissa, had a kosher deli in Pueblo. And so I started talking to her that first day. I said, "So you got a kosher deli?" She goes, "Well, I've got a clean deli, not necessarily kosher." I said, "I'm down with that, because that means you're following the scriptures, not specifically what a rabbi does."
Right.
So, you know, and she said, "Exactly." But I went in there and all the tables had the chairs up on it, and it was roped off. And I said, "Carissa, don't you get most of your money from people coming in here and buying sandwiches for lunch and taking them back to the office, whatever? But isn't lunch one of your big money times?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "Why is it roped off?" Well, she said, "You know, this COVID thing, and, you know, I heard it on Channel 5 News that, you know, we needed to close these types of restaurants down." And I said, "Sugar, did you get a letter from the health department?" "No." I said, "Did you get a letter from the governor? Or even the mayor?" "No." I said, "So you just took something you heard on the news and did it with no weight behind those words?" And she goes, "Oh my God, I guess I did." I said, "You exactly did." But isn't that the way we as humans function? I mean, when Yahweh calls us sheep, he is not being very,
Complimentary.
yeah.
Yeah, sheep are stupid.
They are the stupidest thing on the planet. And if it wasn't for them being so prolific,
Oh, they would be
they would be extinct, you know.
like rabbits.
But we resemble that, and we don't know what words mean. We don't know what righteousness is. We don't know what the path of sanctification is. We don't know what it means to be holy. We don't know this and we don't know that. And on top of all that, we're not gonna ask anybody because we're gonna appear stupid,
Right.
right?
It's funny that I did no longer slaves because I think most of that failing that we have as a species comes out of fear.
It is.
The whole COVID, like this lady, the COVID thing, she heard it on the news, oh my God, it's the end of the world, and we gotta do this to protect everybody. And it's out of fear.
Yeah.
If you could get away from the fear, if you could walk away from the fear. But
Yep.
And where does fear come from?
It's
I
a
think
false
it comes from
belief.
lack of faith.
Our belief system.
Okay, want to expand on that, our belief system?
How we're raised. We're told one thing all our lives, and then there's a wrench thrown in there, like, oh.
19, global hoax, and they pulled it off.
And they're still pulling it off.
Yeah.
That's the thing, they're still perpetuating it and pulling it off. And now that some people are coming around to it, now the flu's coming back, and RSV is here, and bird flu, and
Yeah.
Dad heard on the news this morning, there's someplace that eggs are up to $19 a dozen.
Whew, yeah, baby.
There you go. Start selling.
Your chickens.
Got some gold nuggets.
Yeah. Golden eggs.
Well, don't feel bad. Feel safe. Dr. Fauci got his pardon, so everything's okay. For what, we're not sure, but he got a pardon.
Because innocent people need pardons.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's imperative that not only do we reflect, but we ask questions like, what is righteousness? One of the things that keeps going through my mind, and it goes through very intensely in some seasons rather than others, was Cheryl really ready to see what she was fixing to see and experience? I wonder about that. Because, in that moment, all of the facade is taken away. All what day is Sabbath? Do we need to be baptized? How many times do we need to mikvah? All that stuff goes away. And we're left with the fundamental foundations of our faith.
I don't think anybody is ever really ready. You may say you're ready, you may think you're ready. But stepping into that next phase, I don't know, when the time comes. You guys have dealt with it a lot more than I have, being in the hospice business, but I bet it is very rare for somebody to actually have no fear.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Because the unknown.
Well, it's one thing to, and you know this, it's one thing, I'm like, I'll just die if that happens, Like, I want to be here for the end and be freedom fighter, I don't need that. But if I was facing death, I don't know. I might be like, hey, I don't think so right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's that
Option
human
two.
nature. Again, that human nature comes in, and that's the thing that we're constantly fighting against anyways to overcome.
Will to survive.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it kind of goes back to, you guys have heard me do the tip of the iceberg deal. You know what I mean? I think what it really boils down to where that fear comes is, do you really, really, really believe that when you die, it's not the end? Do you really believe that? We say we believe it, we work really hard to believe it, but in that moment,
Do you?
I think there's always that little bit of doubt. That's where the fear comes from.
Rubber hits the road.
And we try not to be doubtful, and we try not to be fearful of it, but I don't know, man. How do you not? you know?
Yeah, it's,
And that's the question. Do you really believe? Because if you really believe it, there's no reason to be afraid.
right,
You know?
that's right. I mean, we don't even really know what righteousness is, right? I mean, if you ask 10 church people, what is righteousness? Give me the definition of righteousness. You'd probably get 10 different answers. And we've gone over this some in our congregation, so I think we're pretty well versed in that righteousness is the correct or right ways according to the King. The right or correct behavior according to the King, and that is righteousness. And I've heard, and this is one of the things that religion will stick out there, that we can't attain righteousness. Yet, Yahweh called Noah a righteous man. Job was a righteous man. Enoch was a righteous man. And we can go on and on of examples of righteous men. And so when Yahweh says Noah was perfect in his generations and he was a righteous man, what does he mean? What does he mean when he says that?
Well, it means the bloodline's there, and it means that he's doing the right things in the eyes of Yahweh.
Absolutely. He's doing the right things in the eyes of Yahweh.
I think it brings up too, for me, of that, the being obedient, but that it's also righteous that when you do fall, because we make mistakes. So Noah, I'm sure he made some mistakes, but he knew how to ask for forgiveness and how to
And
get back
correct that.
into.
And repent of it.
Repent
how to
from it.
repent, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and a good example of that, Amanda, is King David.
Oh, man.
So,
He did some screwed up stuff. He
Oh,
was
yeah.
still considered
he was a murderer. He
adulterer.
was an
Like the
adulterer. He killed his best friend to cover up the fact that he got his best friend's wife pregnant. Oh my God, it sounds like Farmersville, Texas.
It's a soap opera.
But Yahweh said that David was a man
After his own.
after Yahweh's own heart. How come?
Because he knew how to, hey man, he knew how to own it and change it. You know,
Absolutely.
if you can't own it, you can't change it.
Well, God, I hope he knows our flesh, the sin nature that's in our flesh, we're fighting against it. He knows we can't be perfect. But David, like Travis said, always acknowledged it and
Well, I guess that maybe, Nicole, depends on what your definition of perfection is. Maybe it's in Yahweh's eye, perfection is not making mistakes. Perfection is growing from those mistakes and not making them again.
And David honored God, like he could have killed Saul.
Mhm.
This is God's
Right.
righteous one, so.
But I love his move. He just took one cheat sheet.
Right?
You know, which made him invalid in the temple. So that was very prophetic. You know, so I look over my notes. One of the things that was so ingrained in ancient Israel was righteousness. And as people did those things in Torah, it it became an empty, hollow religious structure. It was something that they had to do, kind of like, you know, when we were in the denominations, it's Sunday, you gotta go to church, and because that's the Sabbath, and you gotta do this, and you gotta do that, and, you know,
Gotta put on your best clothes and your best church face.
yeah,
It was a chore.
If you don't show up, they're gonna talk about
yeah.
you.
But that ain't it. But in ancient Israel, righteousness was so embedded in them that they turned it into a religion. And remember, Yeshua came to Israel, and what did he tell them? Repent. Because you started off right, but then you kept putting your wisdom in what Father told you, and you got this cocoon that's just empty and hollow. It's a religious structure. And so I want you to think about what the sacrifice of righteousness is. What is the true sacrifice of righteousness? Because when we get down to it, it is a sacrifice.
I would say your will.
Isn't it to deny yourself?
It's what, Richard?
Isn't it to deny yourself?
To deny yourself, okay, yep, that's good. Let's take a look at Matthew 5:19.
Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven.
One of the interesting things in here is you can be one of the least and teach men to be the least and still be in the kingdom. See that?
First thing I noticed. You can still be in the kingdom.
You might not like your position, but
Right.
You might be the guy driving the honey dipper around, but you know.
But you're still in the kingdom, and then it says, but whoever does and teaches them the commands, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Now, keep in mind, that's from Yahweh's perspective. If you're gonna teach the commands, you gotta teach it from Yahweh's perspective. Because from man's perspective, it gets all hairball. But from Yahweh's perspective, and especially in Isaiah 55:8, right? He says, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. So it lets us know just how insignificant we are. And one of the resets for me, like Travis, is in the mountains.
It's easy to feel small up there.
Yeah.
But it's also easy to feel powerful.
Yep. One of the things I think that the ancients did that we have a tendency to do as well, is they taught people how to do Torah. I can't tell you how many people I have met of other congregations that says, we do Torah.
What?
Okay. What does that mean? And they cannot tell you.
Well, that's what the preacher said.
Yeah.
Is we do Torah.
Exactly right.
Is that a dance?
It's a list of checking the boxes. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you not do this? Reminds me a lot of the ATF form. That you gotta,
Right.
you know, even on the ATF form it says, are you an illegal alien? Or another question is, are you fleeing from justice? It's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Come on. I guess it's a way to get them out of the DNA pool.
Right.
But, I want you to think for a minute what the difference between doing Torah and allowing Torah to do you. Think about that. What is the difference between you doing Torah and you allowing Torah to do you?
Well, if you're doing Torah, you're just going through the motions. If you let Torah do you, then it's being instilled in you.
Something I really struggle with as we're talking about righteousness and all of that. I think it's, again, old church things, but the doing the works, how is it not from that selfish standpoint, from your own gain? When you read about being called great in the kingdom by doing it and teaching someone else, I'm like, well, of course you want to be the one who's great, not the one who's least. So how is it not out of your own selfish ambition? How is it just to be honoring the Father and not because I want a better end, I want to store up those treasures, I want to do that?
That's a good question. At what point does it stop being service to Father and start being service to ourselves?
I think, you know, an epiphany I had many years ago is if God designed us to experience happiness and joy and satisfaction and those kinds of things. So if you're using the gifts that the Father gave you for the betterment of His kingdom, it's okay for you to receive pleasure from that as well, to receive joy, to receive satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
And the churchiness, like we talked about, teaches you that, oh, that's wrong. So, I don't think that it is. I mean, he designed us that way.
Right.
You know, it's just you got to remember that He gave you those gifts for a purpose. Doesn't mean that every time you use that gift, it's specifically in your mind, okay, I'm doing this for the kingdom. But, you know, whether it's a good example is like whether it's here in church or whether it's at McClure's on Friday night. If I'm singing a song and I reach out and touch somebody, that's me using God's gift.
Right.
I get pleasure from it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's a byproduct.
But I can sing in a room with nobody around and I don't get near as much pleasure from it as I do if I'm affecting somebody. That's how God designed it. You know, so you got to get that churchy, oh my God, it's not okay to have fun, or oh my God, it's not okay to be happy, or it's not okay to get self-satisfaction from these things. Because that's what's instilled in us. It is.
We're built for relationships. We're designed.
Did that tie in like I wanted it to? Okay. Yeah. I wanted to make sure it did.
Where'd you go, Travis?
Right.
Understanding the parameters of the covenant, the Torah, the teachings and instructions, however you want to refer to it, that is so important that Father, I want you to think about this, Father gave us 7 feasts and 52 Sabbaths every year. You think about that, that's more on the feast side of things, that's more than every other month. Right? When there's only 12 months, now when there's 13 months, it can be every other month in those years. But it's so important that Father teaches us things like kashrut. Why do you think kashrut is important? And just because Father said so, we all understand that. So let's move past that.
Well, it sets you apart, because so much socializing is eating. So you're probably not gonna go feast at somebody's house, that's back then Gentile, right? And then, so you're not gonna go there to celebrate their holidays, it's just keeping. And then some people say because the stuff that you can't eat, like shellfish, give you hepatitis, pork, give you trichinosis. But then I was told, well, that, we eliminated that, so now you don't have to worry about it. I mean, I don't think that works.
Yes.
It's just one reason to set us apart.
Maintains our health.
Huh?
It'll maintain our health. Right. We take care of what God gave you. You don't get another one. This is the one body we get.
Darn it.
That's right. I mean, look at this sexy pogo stick body I've got. But kashrut, do you realize that causes us to be interested in what is in the food that we're buying to consume? I can tell you in our household, I have such a negative reaction to unclean foods, if you will, that Teresita pays close attention to the ingredients. So if we were like is happening, if they were manipulating the food crops, who's going to know that first? Who's going to know that first?
Ones that are paying attention to the ingredients.
Ones that are paying attention to the ingredients. So that's kind of a background benefit to kashrut. You're paying attention to what's in your food. That's paramount. In the other commands, you're paying attention to the clothes you wear. Do not mix wool and linen. Wear cotton, 100% cotton, 100% linen. And I know that we can't always do that, but if we could, it's so much better for your body. So there's a reason behind the obvious of why Yahweh gave us these mitzvot. Seven times a year, he calls us to remembrance. 3 of those 7, he calls us to Temple Mount, right? They're the Hagim. And then he gives us the weekly Sabbath. What do you think the weekly Sabbath symbolizes?
Opportunity to reflect.
Rest, reflect.
Time to reflect.
It's like a nice pause to make sure that you're in his rhythm. A nice like check myself constantly. And I try to do that even daily now. Yeah, check myself.
That's good.
I think if we go back to creation, again, that man was made on the 6th day, and it was very good. And so then that 7th day is to reflect on that it is very good, that he's good, and what good has he provided throughout the week, and that type of stuff.
And you spend time, you stay in your tent, right, with your family.
Yeah. You know, when you really sit down and contemplate these things, it's good. And we need to remember. You remember when Israel was crossing the Jordan and they crossed on dry land? You remember that? What did Yahweh tell them to do?
The stones,
Yep. Pick up stones from the bottom of the river so that they can remember. It's the same thing as why he tells us to teach these things to our children. To pass it from one generation to the next. We just entered the 11th month, biblically, the 11th biblical month. How is that significant? That means Passover's right around the corner. Right? When is Passover? What day?
14th,
Here we go.
Just close.
It's just right around the corner. The spring equinox is going to be on March 20th, which means the first sliver past March 20th will start the first month of the new year. It's all Father's rhythm. And it's the rhythm he started at creation. Why is it important to be in his rhythm?
We like to use that analogy, like a couple square dancing, or if you're not in rhythm, you're gonna be stepping on each other, and you won't be happy, especially the husband.
Yeah, and we've trashed some squares, haven't we, years ago?
We can screw up a dance square, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think it goes back to that righteousness question. If you're in a rhythm, it's gonna be hard to be righteous because his expectation of your actions and your reactions and your behaviors are based on his rhythm. Because, it's situation. What are you supposed to do in any given situation? If you're out of rhythm with the Father, it's gonna be hard to make a decision that matches up with what he thinks is the right decision.
Absolutely.
He gives us the directions, it's our responsibility to follow them. We're out of rhythm on our own, out of our own fault.
Yes,
Put it
indeed.
this way, walk out to your car and switch 2 spark plug wires and tell me how good that runs. You know, you're not in rhythm, man. It'll run, but it ain't gonna run good.
It's gonna be all balanced, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, that is what I have.
Thank you, that's good.
Good.